House Committee on Ways and Means will now come to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Chair Meyer.
Here.
Vice Chair Theory.
Here.
Button.
Here.
Craddock. Griffin Hawkins. Hefner. Here. Munoz. Noble.
Here.
Raymond. Here. Shine. Here. Turner. Here. Quorum.
Quorum is present. If you're testifying, please make sure you have filled out the electronic witness affirmation form on the registration kiosk in the hallway. When testifying, please state your name, who you represent, whether you're testifying on, for, or against the measure. Also, please limit your testimony to 3 minutes and avoid repeating any testimony that has already been presented. Members, does anyone have any comments before we begin? All right, seeing none. Chair lays out House Bill 3241 and calls Chair Guillen to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning. Members, there's currently an ad valorem tax exemption for farm outputs such as poultry, eggs, and cattle, as well as an exemption for implements of husbandry used in the production of farming. However, there is no ad valorem exemption for assets used to begin the production of farming, which creates inconsistency in the law and an unnecessary tax burden for farmers. This bill exempts farm inputs such as fertilizer, feed, pesticides, weaned animals, and any other asset used to produce crops or farm outputs from property taxes. Members, this bill will protect farmers and ranchers from rising property taxes and help ensure that they can put food on our tables. It's a result of a constituent concern. The committee sub is just a ledge council draft. I can answer any questions if y'all have any.
Very good. Members, any questions? All right, thank you, Chair Guillen. Chair calls Bill Carson.
Chair Meyer, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to testify here. I'm Bill Carson, representing myself, Native Texas Nursery, a grower, producer of landscape materials, and the Texas Nursery and Landscape Association, a $30 million association that represents the $30 million green industry in Texas. We wholeheartedly support this bill because it is inconsistent, we believe, that the components of a tax-exempt product not be exempted from the personal property tax. This leads to inconsistency of application from one county to another. It also seems illogical and unreasonable that I, as a producer, if I go out and fertilize my crop on December 31st, I will pay no taxes on that fertilizer that I used. But if my neighbor fertilizes their crop on January 2nd, he just has to turn around and pay fertilizer for the fertilizer in his barn. Typically, farmers utilize materials such as insecticides and pesticides and fertilizers on a needed basis. But in recent, with the COVID situation and the supply chains being disrupted, we as producers had to go to our suppliers and say, we need the material, how much do we have to buy right now to make sure that we have it? So we had to store more than usual. Our tax bills this year were much greater than we've ever seen for no reason at all. We feel that this bill will add logic and consistency to a situation that now will add more confidence to the tax bill and allow more compliance because of consistency and does not erode the confidence in our tax situation with inconsistencies. If you have any questions.
Members, any questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Carson.
Thank you, Chairman.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3241? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Chair Guillen to close on House Bill 3241.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, we got a good fiscal note on it. It has no fiscal implication to the state. And if there's no further questions, I close and I ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, thank you, Chair Guillen. If there's no objection, House Bill 3241 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 3241 is left pending. Chair lays out House Joint Resolution 141. The chair offers a committee substitute and calls Chair Guillen to explain the joint resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is the constitutional amendment for the previous bill that we just laid out a bit ago. We do have a committee sub.
Oh, yeah, the chair offers a committee substitute and calls Chair Guillen to explain the joint resolution. I believe I stated that earlier, but we'll make sure.
Okay.
No, but if you want to point out the differences, Chair, please go ahead.
Yeah, the committee sub is simply a ledge council draft that fixes a drafting error that should fix the fiscal note. We drafted it in-house and made a mistake, and so this ledge council draft should fix the fiscal note. I'll answer any questions.
Very good. Members, any questions for Chair Guillen? All right, is there anyone who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Joint Resolution 141? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Chair Guillen to close on House Joint Resolution 141.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
Thank you, sir. Committee substitute is withdrawn. If there is no objection, House Joint Resolution 141 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Joint Resolution 141 is left pending. Chair lays out House Bill 4602. The chair offers a committee substitute and calls Chair Canales to explain the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Meyer, committee members, for allowing me to lay out the House bill and hearing the substitute. This bill should be memorable because it's been passed out of the House several times, but has died in the Senate. They say flattery gets you everywhere, so we'll start with that. It's been passed by people much more intelligent, better looking, and taller than me. So Chairman Meyer passed this out in 2021, and Chairman Burrows passed it out in 2019. I believe that we've made a lot of progress in the Senate. Basically, there's new entrants in the Texas marketplace that are renting cars to the public, which is good. It's great competition. But they're taking advantage of an outdated collection system and avoiding tax collection obligations to the state. Under the current law, the vehicle owner is required to collect and remit the state tax on the transaction. This is just not happening. So approximately 37 other states have adopted and updated their laws to address the collection and remittance obligations of new market entrants. Like the Wayfair legislation in 2019, this bill is a collection mechanism for the taxes that are due today, not being collected. If there's any questions, I ask for the privilege to close.
Members, any questions? Chairman Canales, I just have one. All we're simply doing here, straightforwardly, is closing a loophole.
That's it.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Chair calls John Ackerman.
Chairman Meyer, Vice Chair Theory, members of the committee, good morning. My name is John Ackerman. I am the Executive Vice President of Global Strategy Development at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Additionally, I serve as chairman of the Texas Commercial Airports Association, a group of 13 airports that collectively serve 98% of airline passengers in our state. This legislation is a priority for us to preserve important revenue for our communities and fund future infrastructure investment throughout the state. I'm here testifying in support of the bill. Thank you, Chairman Meyer, for your continued support of this issue. You passed similar legislation last session, and we're grateful for your focus on the importance of leveling this playing field. Thank you, Representative Canales, for your work on H-Bill 4602. You, Senator Nichols, and joint author Representative Thompson have outlined a thoughtful approach that promotes tax equity. Marketplace rental providers, peer-to-peer platforms, serve many customers in Texas. Currently, these out-of-state companies are not collecting or remitting state or local taxes in Texas. Texas law outlines tax collection obligations for all vehicle rentals, and it is only fair for all rental car providers to pay these taxes, just like they are currently paying in 43 jurisdictions in the United States. While these providers purport to connect just individuals, hence peer-to-peer, this only tells a portion of the story. Some of these renters, known as professional hosts or power hosts on their very own websites, have fleets of vehicles they work full-time to rent out, 50 or more cars, and more than 18,000 transactions for some rental providers through these online platforms. In fact, public filings from one company make it clear that more than 70% of their revenue is from these larger operators rather than individuals. This year, we estimate one marketplace rental provider's annual revenue in Texas will be more than $120 million, and that's $120 million they're paying no tax on. These companies boast in their public filings about the systems and support they provide their renters to help them operate large businesses, but would have this legislature believe they're just trying to help mom and pops. This simply is not accurate. HB 4602 would provide thorough and consistent tax collection rules for all rental car operators, whether they're a physical business or an online marketplace. Thank you for your time. We encourage your support of this bill, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And again, thank you, Chairman Meyer, for attempting to pass this again.
Of course, Mr. Ackerman. Members, any questions?
Yes,
Chair recognizes Representative Shine.
So on this tax collection, are you collecting taxes from other states or renters in other states in this process yourselves?
The Texas Commercial Airports Association does not collect any taxes, sir.
None at all?
We don't.
Okay.
We're a group of commercial airports. We don't. The taxes are paid to the state, not to the airports, sir.
Okay, and y'all are not involved in the process, though?
I'm in the process of taxation, no, sir. We operate airports.
Members, any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Ackerman. I do have a question. What do you think, as there is one opponent to this here today, what are the opponents to this legislation? What are their arguments, and how would you refute them?
Well, I think one of their arguments has been that this is simply mom and pops, and we've provided ample information, again, from their own public filings and from their own websites that suggest that that's simply not accurate. So I think that's the first thing they would say. The second thing they will say is this is a new tax, and I think, as you simply said, this is not a new tax. This tax has been on the books for more than 30 years. They're simply not paying it. And what I'd like everybody to understand is Texas airports want new businesses. We want our customers crave new businesses. We crave new ways of doing things, and we've incorporated all manners of other types of these business models. But this is an industry that is simply refusing to comply with any rules or regulations, and then are exploiting a loophole. They're renting cars through an online app instead of a counter. It's as simple as that, and they're trying to pretend that they're not.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Members, any other questions? Thanks, sir. Chair calls Kenny Montilla.
Good morning, Chairman Meyer, Vice Chair Theory, members of the committee. My name is Kenny Montilla. I'm a Senior Government Relations Manager at Turo. I want to start first and foremost by thanking you all for giving us the time to be here with you today. On behalf of Turo, I would like to express our strong opposition to this bill. For those who aren't aware, Turo is a peer-to-peer car sharing marketplace where people can book any car they want from local car owners. We do not own or operate any of the vehicles on our platform. Turo merely serves as an intermediary between Texans who share their vehicles and the guests in need of one, the majority of which are also Texans. Proponents of House Bill 4602 cite a need to level the playing field as the impetus for this bill. The truth is that this bill exacerbates an already unlevel playing field by imposing additional taxes on Texans while ignoring the motor vehicle sales tax exemption granted to traditional rental car companies. During a public hearing on Senate Bill 1498, House Bill 4602's companion bill, a representative from the rental car industry acknowledged that rental car companies do not pay the motor vehicle sales tax. They also stated that rental car companies satisfy their tax obligation by collecting and remitting the gross rental receipts tax from consumers. The gross rental receipts tax was created to recoup the loss for the state via rental car companies' motor vehicle sales tax exemption. Our point is, if Texans who share their vehicles on Turo paid the motor vehicle sales tax on purchase, there is no loss to recoup. As drafted, House Bill 4602 would also require Texans who utilize peer-to-peer car sharing services and pay the motor vehicle sales tax out of pocket to collect an additional gross rental receipts tax, resulting in Texans having to remit twice as much in taxes as multi-billion-dollar out-of-state rental car companies. If that's not enough, House Bill 4602 would also require Texans who share their vehicles to collect the local stadium tax. Texans who utilize peer-to-peer car sharing are residents who already help fund stadiums via property taxes and general sales taxes they contribute to their local economies. When considering a tax increase, we believe it's important to consider the entire tax framework. This is another attempt by traditional rental car companies to stifle entrepreneurship and competition by ensuring that peer-to-peer car sharing receives all the burdens of rental car companies, but none of the benefits. For the aforementioned reasons, we reiterate our opposition to this measure and respectfully ask members to vote no on House Bill 4602. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Very good. Members, any questions? Yes, Chair recognizes Representative Shine.
Yes, sir, I do have a few questions for you. So you do collect taxes in other states, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I think there's been a couple states recently that have been imposed taxes. Is that correct?
Well, again, taxes are, there's more than one tax, right? Typically what we collect.
There's some new states that have been added to a list of those states that you're paying taxes to, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when you look at what states you do collect, do you know how many states you do collect taxes on? And can you give us an idea of who those states are and how many there might be?
If we're talking specifically about what would be the state's equivalent of a rental car tax, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but happy to follow up and get that over to you.
Okay. My understanding is it's as many as 30 states. Would that be pretty much close to an estimate you would have?
I wouldn't want to misspeak. I'm happy to get the information and follow
So if
up.
that's the case, and you're collecting in up to 30 other states, then I guess my question would be, why do you oppose doing it in Texas?
I don't believe we're talking about the same tax. In most states, we do collect and remit a sales tax. In Texas, we also collect and remit a sales tax. As it relates specifically to rental car taxes, each state has different frameworks. In some cases, it'll be less than, there's a different tax for peer-to-peer than there is for rental car. But again, I don't want to misspeak, so I will happily follow up with specific information.
Then how would this impact your business model? Just like-
For,
How will this impact your business?
again, I think for our host, which is who we're here really talking about, if we want to talk about level the playing field, we're happy to have that conversation, and we want to look at the framework in its entirety, the tax framework. However, we don't believe it's fair that a major rental car corporation gets an exemption on the motor vehicle sales tax and our hosts do not. So already we're starting on an unlevel playing field.
Have you been engaged with the author of this legislation in your opposition?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, any other questions? Chair recognizes, I'm sorry, Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I want to try to better understand why you're opposed to this bill. I mean, I think Chairman Canales is trying to have a consistent framework for rental car companies, and it seems, and I appreciate the innovation that Turo and similar platforms bring, and those opportunities that they provide to Texans to be able to make a little extra money. But why shouldn't you be treated the same as other rental car companies?
That's a great question, Representative, and I don't think we're arguing that we should be treated any differently. I think we're calling out the fact that today, as the law exists, or even as would be, let's say 4602 were to pass, that would treat us differently in that rental car companies get a motor vehicle sales tax exemption that peer-to-peer car sharing hosts do not. If the state wanted to propose an actual level playing field where peer-to-peer and rental car companies operated under the same tax framework from the start to finish, we would sign up for that today. We don't believe that's what this bill does.
Okay. So you talked about, individuals being able to, earn a little extra money by, putting their cars on your platform. But I mean, how much of your platform currently is sort of, a mom and pop, or however you want to say it, just an individual versus someone who's really figured out how to monetize your platform to make it their main source of income?
Yeah, 90% of our hosts share less than 3 vehicles.
90% share less than 3 vehicles. So 10% share more than 3 vehicles.
Correct.
Okay. What percent of revenue does that 10% represent? Would you guesstimate?
I again, don't want to misspeak, but happy to get that information for you. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay. Because you do, as I understand it, market to professional hosts. Like that's part of your pitch to attract new people to new users to your platform, is it not? To advertising the opportunities for professional hosts who typically share 10 or more cars, often as their primary income source. And I'm quoting from your SEC filing.
Yeah.
Is that right?
We wouldn't deny that. I think one thing that is important to keep in mind about all this, though, is that just because someone has, let's say, 10 vehicles listed on their platform or on their profile does not mean they own the 10 vehicles. Oftentimes, folks co-host, so I'll share my uncle's vehicle for them, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. So in the case we heard earlier from the Commercial Airports Association, so when your hosts are marketing or making available cars to rent at an airport in Texas, how does that work mechanically? Like if you're flying into Austin Bergstrom and you've gone on the Turo app and reserved a car, like, how do you go about actually getting the vehicle?
So Turo itself as a platform, we don't get involved in that. That's between the guest and the vehicle owner, however they want to figure that transaction out. I do appreciate the question about the airports because I think it's also important to recognize the fact that this notion that Turo does not wish to comply with regulations, I think is utterly false. We've shown that in the fact that we have over 65 agreements with airports across the country, large, medium, and small hubs, and each permit is tailored specifically to whatever the airport sees best, to work for the peer-to-peer sharing industry as well as the airports.
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is how that works. Like if I fly in an airport and I'm renting a car from Enterprise or Hertz or whoever, I mean, I know I go to the rental car center and, process my, paperwork, whatever, get my car and go. Like, where do I go if I'm getting a car via Turo?
Typically, hosts would use parking as any other user would, so you pay for the parking.
So the terminal parking garages.
It would depend. It's not very specific. Airports have different requirements, so I, again, don't want to speak out of turn, but typically it's done at an airport parking lot.
Okay, so those parking lots are being used to, basically house the vehicle until the renter comes to retrieve it.
If we'd say leaving a vehicle parked for an hour, maybe two, is housing the vehicle, that's one way to put it, but I wouldn't categorize it as such. It's using parking the way any other airport user would.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Noble and also recognizes the fact that Representative Munoz and Representative Gervin Hawkins are present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So where are y'all located? Where is your headquarters?
San Francisco, California.
San Francisco, okay. So I'm curious about, I'm going to circle back around to the other states that you collect a sales tax in. Do those car owners pay the sales tax, or do you pass that cost on to the user?
Which, you're referring to the sales tax collected on the transaction?
Yes.
That's on the consumer.
So the fact that the owner of the car has paid a sales tax when they bought the car actually doesn't affect, they aren't the ones paying the sales tax. It's actually on another person, another individual, correct?
Correct.
So I feel like you're kind of comparing apples and oranges with the sales tax argument, because, I mean, not the sales tax, the when you purchase your car tax, the 6.25%, that actually doesn't, the bottom line is that the consumer, the one that rents the car, is the one paying the sales tax, not the owner of the car. You're losing me in your logic when you're comparing that to somebody else that's paying a sales tax
So
on a vehicle's purchase in the original purchase.
my response to that would be, again, if we're talking about paying a sales tax, you're taxing the use of the vehicle. That's very different, in our opinion, than the gross rental receipts tax, which is specific to rental cars. We're not saying that we're not open to any tax whatsoever. We don't believe that this is the proper vehicle for it.
So what tax would you like to see?
If there's a conversation to generally be had about sales taxes, I think that's something we can engage in. We don't believe that categorizing us as rental car, again, it just doesn't take the full framework into perspective.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on that, but thank you.
Members, any other questions? One thing, though, a few points I want to clarify, and I believe you made a couple of these points, but there's definitely one. So clarify that you don't actually pay the tax, right? You collect it from the renter and then remit it to the comptroller, fair?
Correct, but I think it's also worth pointing out, Chairman, that more than half of our trips in Texas are in-state by Texans, so.
Sure. And then people offering their vehicles don't pay the rental tax, the person renting the vehicle does, correct?
Correct.
And then finally, you've referred to multiple times about the sales tax when they purchase their car, but can't they, pursuant to Mr. Canales' bill, I believe Section 5, if I'm not mistaken, claim a credit for that, right?
Correct.
Okay, so they can claim a tax credit for the sales tax, but you had mentioned earlier that was an issue. And then, as I think Ms. Noble pointed out, you had mentioned all these big, scary, out-of-state rental companies, but you yourself are based in San Francisco, California?
Correct.
But you would be out of state as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate it, sir. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Chair calls Brian Rothery.
Good morning, Chair Meyer, Vice Chair Theory, members of the committee. I'll go ahead and get the out-of-state stuff out of the way. I'm from St. Louis. Sorry. I flew in from our headquarters in St. Louis last night, and I'm privileged to be here with you this morning. My name is Brian Rothery. I'm Vice President of Government Public Affairs with Enterprise Holdings. We operate the Alamo National and Enterprise car rental brands. In addition to car rental, we do car sales, fleet management, van pooling, car sharing throughout the state. We actually have 5,500 talented folks operating 400 locations throughout the state of Texas. We're in every one of your districts. We're serving your constituents. We're primarily known for our car rental business. That's what we're here to talk about today. We think Chair Canales' bill, House Bill 4602, proposes fair rules for companies engaged in a similar service.
Ms. Rothery, just so I make sure I get this, you were testifying for the bill.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Very good.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll make sure.
I'm in support. I'm sorry. 4602, it's providing rules for companies that are engaged in competition for the same customer, providing essentially the same service. Myself, I've had the privilege or the gray hair to prove the fact that I've been involved in this conversation for the past 4 years across the country. Many of the states you all reference that have addressed rules I've been involved in, and so I'm privileged to be here before you this morning. I offer myself as a resource in case you have questions about what other states have had. But I do believe this bill provides fair rules to some of the questions that were discussed earlier. You know, I'd love to get into some of the back and forth on that, but at the end of the day, all that experience yields that, you know, these vehicles are not simply owned by individuals exclusively. There are large fleet owners, and in some cases, and this is not the case of Turo, but some of their competitors, the companies themselves even own the vehicles, and that's come out through the testimony in various states. We think House Bill 4602 is a good way to address all the different ways in which one of these cars can come on a platform, and that's one of the reasons why we support it. And I make myself here available to answer any questions you have about this.
Members, any questions? Very good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 4602? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Chair Canales to close on House Bill 4602.
Thank you, Chairman. Just so we're clear, in 2021, Turo from their website says they generated $469 million, representing a 213% growth from $149 million in 2020. In 2022, they generated $746 million, representing a 59% growth from $469 million in 2021. They actually market towards growing and scaling these businesses. They're not marketing towards the individual person that wants to share their car. They have a scaling program. They said they're interested in scaling their Turo business with business management capabilities is what they help to do. But what I will tell you is this, is that the portion of what they came and represented to you is disingenuous, not from them, but from the very start. When the purchaser purchased the vehicle and they pay that sales tax, it's because they're representing the state of Texas, that it's just for them. And what happens is now you become a rental company. And so, yes, car companies from the beginning disclose, we're a rental car company, and so they get that tax benefit. But these people get two benefits. They get to use the car as their own, and they get to rent it out. And so being able to try to separate the hares from the hounds or the apples from the oranges is impossible. What we need to do is, if you're gonna rent your car, and when you're renting your car, we're gonna treat you like a car rental company. We're gonna tax you that way. And the reason you're not getting exempted from the tax on the front end is because you bought it as a private person, representing the state of Texas. That was what it was for. And so we're not penalizing you. What we're saying is we're giving you the opportunity in Texas, but we're also collecting the taxes that we should. I stand for any questions.
Members, any questions for Chair Canales? All right, seeing none. Thank you, sir. The committee substitute is withdrawn. If there's no objection, House Bill 4602 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 4602 is left pending. Chair lays out House Bill 2327 and calls on Chair Goldman to briefly explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I will be brief. Currently, ag and timber numbers issued by the Comptroller's Office are required to be renewed every 4 years. House Bill 2327 sets to make exemptions to this already tedious renewal requirement for the 65 and older population who are issued an ag timber number. House Bill 2327 states that an individual 65 or older is not required to renew, nor does the issue number expire. Happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions? Hold on. Chairman Goldman, is there anyone who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2327? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Chair Goldman to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I close.
2327. Thank you, Chair Goldman. If there's no objection, House Bill 2327 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 2327 is left pending. Chair lays out House Bill 4809 and calls on Chair Capriglione to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Now, I don't know about that last bill, but on this one, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee today. Children and families across the state are experiencing higher levels of mental health and substance abuse issues, trauma, and economic stressors they cannot handle alone. These families include pregnant and parenting families, kinship families caring for their child relatives, and adoptive families who may be caring for children impacted by trauma. Long before government agencies existed, faith and community-based organizations provided services and support for children and families in their communities. The current increase in need provides a challenge, but also an opportunity to do more. These nonprofits work hard to raise and steward private funds to support their work. But to meet the increasing needs of families across Texas and avoid state intervention, except in only the most unsafe situations, nonprofit agencies need the support of both the private and the public sectors to develop and fund the necessary human resources. The committee substitute to House Bill 4809 would create a 4-year pilot program to incentivize the private sector to support eligible organizations that provide family strengthening services by offering a limited dollar-for-dollar tax credit on franchise taxes up to $2 million a year per corporation or $25 million a year total. Eligibility will be limited to the nonprofit community and faith-based organizations in good standing with the state of Texas who have a demonstrated track record of 3 years or more providing various mental health services, parenting skill-based services, comprehensive case management, and financial empowerment services. Members, I think what these nonprofit and faith-based community organizations do to help struggling families across Texas is important, life-saving work. And providing them help through the Strong Families Tax Credit will help the state of Texas meet our goals of happy, healthy families even faster. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Reserve the right to close.
Members, Chair recognizes Representative Gervin Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative. You're talking about tax credits. How can a nonprofit benefit from tax credits?
It's a good question. So there are multiple ways that people can help in these types of programs. They can, of course, donate directly to the nonprofit. But in this particular case, what we're aiming to do is incentivize private companies by donating and helping to provide these services. So in this bill, there's 4 different sections of tax code, but we'll take, for instance, the insurance tax code as an example. If an insurance company were to do this, they would get a dollar-for-dollar reduction in their insurance taxes that are due. So if they donated $500,000 to these nonprofits, they would receive a similar one-for-one tax credit on their insurance tax.
I mean, I'm loving it. I think,
Awesome.
you know, in times of where families are a little weak, you know, we've got to wrap our arms around those most in need. So if we can create that resource base where there can be more activity in our communities, that's awesome.
We've always wanted to do things like this. We have done things like this in the past, but post-pandemic, we're just seeing that need is even more important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Chair calls Doug Young.
For the record, my name is Doug Young, and I am representing the Texas Coalition of Homes for Children, and I support CSHB 4809. In my day job, I am the president of Foster's Home for Children, located in Stephenville, Texas. And like the other 27 agencies in the Coalition of Homes for Children, Foster's is a nonprofit, community-based provider of child welfare, adoption, foster care, and family strengthening services. Our community-based agencies are committed to ensuring families receive care, support, and guidance needed to reach their full potential. Though not a requirement for membership, many of our agencies are faith-based ministries with many years of proven service to children and families. Coalition agencies also work to strengthen families by supporting the caregiving capacities of parents, grandparents, and other relative caregivers. Family care provides safe housing and supportive services to empower single-parent families in becoming self-sufficient. Coalition agencies provide parent education classes, in-home visiting programs that strengthen parenting skills and reduce the risk of disruptions in the family. Our agencies are positively impacting future generations by equipping families with the skills and abilities to meet the needs of children today. I'd like to hit just a few key points. The Strong Families Tax Credit in CSHB 4809 in a very tailored way will incentivize more businesses to dedicate funding to a proven and trusted nonprofit like Foster's Home that promotes and strengthens families in their communities. CSHB 4809 is a bold move in the right direction and represents a significant improvement in Texas public policy. We seek to enhance our partnership with the state in caring for families, and we want to continue delivering successfully for Texas in need, or Texans in need, excuse me. Mr. Chairman and members, thank you very much for hearing me on CSHB 4809 today. That concludes my testimony. I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Members, any questions? Very good. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate your work as well.
Thank you.
Chair calls Henry Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman, members, for allowing me to testify today. And thank you, Representative Capriglione, for filing this bill. My name is Henry Jackson. I am the president of Child and Family Services for Buckner International. I've been at Buckner for 35 years, and this is my first time testifying in the Texas legislature. I come to be before you today because this bill is so important to our state. Buckner has been protecting children, strengthening families, seniors, and transforming generations in Texas for over 144 years. The biggest lesson that we've learned in all of this time is that children belong in their families when it is possible. We have deliberately moved upstream in the past decade or so to provide families strengthening and preservation services to keep families and children out of the Child Protective Service system. We strengthen families through our prevention contract with DFPS. However, DFPS cannot fund all the things we know we need to do to empower families to reach their God-given potentials. I want to highlight two critical programs that are entirely privately funded and that the Strong Families Texas Tax Credit would help us take to scale. One, our Family Hope Centers provide parenting, vocational education, youth development, fatherhood, promotion, financial empowerment, and family coaching that help families stabilize, improve family functioning, and become self-sufficient. Secondly, our Family Pathways program provide housing and support to single parents so they can obtain a college degree or vocational certification while parenting their children, starting a career to help them get out of poverty, providing for their families, and transforming their children's future. The Strong Families Tax Credit could help us serve more families and in more areas in our state. Buckner has a robust fundraising team, and we do receive funding from small businesses and a couple of large ones too, where their corporate giving programs align with our mission. But the tax credit would incentivize more businesses to dedicate funding to strengthen families in their communities by allowing them to donate funds they've already set aside to a trusted nonprofit. Buckner is only one of hundreds of nonprofits across the state that provides strengthened services to strengthen families. Our ask today of $25 million in tax credits over 4 years is a small ask, given the amount of nonprofits and the number of families that could benefit from this and the other tax credit bills we've heard in this session. We believe this tax credit bill is the most important one in front of you. In all of our years of working in Texas, we've learned that strong families are critical to the health and well-being in the future of our state. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions that you have at this time.
Members, any questions for Mr. Jackson? Yes, Chair recognizes Vice Chair Theory.
Thank you, Chairman Meyer. Good morning.
Good
Thank you
morning.
so much for your testimony. And I just want to salute you for the years that you've been at Buckner and for all the work that you do. I can think of so many areas in my own district that will completely benefit from the type of programs you're talking about. I was talking with Chair Capriglione about a week ago. Actually, I'm happy to be a joint author on this bill. And he shared with me some of the work that he's doing. And I told him about a program in my district that is like a manhood development program. It strengthens families, but it starts young with boys that are at risk. And the goal is to help them with not just academically, career services, character building, all of those. But they, these nonprofits are stretched. And so it would be so helpful, I believe, with something like this where we can, as you said, Rep. Reverend Hawkins, kind of bring more private industry into the fold. So I just want to tell you I completely support this, and I look forward to seeing it come to fruition.
Thank you so much.
Members, any other questions? Chair recognizes Representative Schott.
Sir, you've been, you've got a long history here. Have y'all looked at getting into some of the more rural areas across Texas with your services?
Yes, sir, we have. Actually, we're in the middle of our strategic planning, and we have goals to continue to look at all of the areas across Texas. We're currently located in multiple areas from Amarillo, all of West Texas, Midland, Lubbock, down to Houston, Longview, Lufkin, Dallas, of course, Fort Worth, multiple locations across the state of Texas, and we're continuing to look at where is the need and how can we partner with other community leaders, banks, churches, organizations to provide services to
Are you
families.
currently partnering with any rural organizations out there at the moment, other than the ones that are mentioned on your handout?
In terms of, yes, and say in West Texas, we partner with most of all the universities in that area, multiple churches in that area, and some businesses as well.
Do you feel like this legislation would allow you to expand into some of these other underserved areas? Or is this particularly just to enhance where you currently are?
Both, to go deeper, but more so to help additional families in different locations around the state of Texas.
Do you have a part of your criteria, is it as far as where you have locations and looking at partnerships, do you have kind of maybe a population criteria that you go into certain size communities versus other size communities?
Not so much the size, but we look at the demographics, we look at education, teenage pregnancy, we look at the economics. We do an assessment of the neighborhood and to try to determine where is the need the greatest and how can we bring partners together to go and impact that neighborhood.
Just kind of a question, have you ever looked at Central Texas and then the Killeen, Harker Heights because of Fort Hood and the large numbers? Because I know that we have a lot of issues there with families that are deployed, families that have children that are left there with one parent and just lots of transitioning, so to speak. And the demographics there, I think, might fit into what you just alluded to.
Yes, sir. So I'm not on top of my head. I don't want to speak out of turn, but certainly we can look at that area. I know one of the areas that we're currently looking at right now is the San Antonio area, El Paso, and some other areas that's in our plan that we're targeting to look at. But yes, if the demographics are there and the need is there, we're open to looking at those areas and how we can impact those areas.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Members, any other questions? Thank you, sir, for your testimony and for your service. We appreciate it. All right, Chair calls up Patrick Stevens, and Mr. Stevens, please be aware, we probably need to close this out in the next 3 or 4 minutes.
I can do that.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your opportunity to speak in support of House Bill 4809. My name is Patrick Stevens, and I work at Family First, which is a national nonprofit organization. At Family First, we reach moms and dads each day with practical, timely advice through 2 main programs, iMom and All Pro Dad. Today, I want to talk about our fatherhood program, All Pro Dad, which nationally has its largest presence here in Texas. Many of you met Pro Football Hall of Fame head coach Tony Dungy when he was here at the Capitol last month. Coach Dungy is a co-founder of All Pro Dad, serves as our national spokesman, but most importantly, is a father to 11 children and understands our important work. At All Pro Dad, we are fighting the fatherlessness crisis by asking dads to give us 1 minute a day, 1 hour a month, and 1 day a year. 1 minute a day reading our daily email goes straight to dad's inbox with impactful tips and tricks on how to be more engaged. 1 hour a month attending our All Pro Dad breakfast program called an All Pro Dad chapter. We have 1,400 chapters across the states meeting in public in Title I schools in 44 different states. And here in Texas, we have 359 chapters. And we're continuing to focus on expanding across the entire state and inviting dads and kids to spend time together on campus, participate in our character-based curriculum, and dad walks their kid to class. The third thing is 1 day a year at an All Pro Dad experience event held in an NFL or NCAA facility. We've held over 120 events with 32 different NFL and NCAA teams and have hosted several events here in Texas. Our experiences tell us that state governments and nonprofit organizations can be powerful partners in the fight to strengthen families, but the truth is that we need additional help. The Strong Families Tax Credit is an opportunity to invite corporate partners to join that fight by diverting their tax liability and investing in nonprofit organizations. The Strong Families Tax Credit has been very successful in the state of Florida and is a great example of the impact that the program can have. Family First is one of the organizations in Florida that is engaged in that effort and can attest to the positive impacts it's having across the state. As you probably know, the family service agencies in Texas and Florida are very similar, so I'm certain that the needs and support align closely as well. The financial contributions in Florida through the Strong Families Tax Credit have been huge, but even more than that, it's the corporations that truly buy in. Whether it's providing volunteers, starting chapters at their kids' school, or simply bringing visibility.
I'm sorry, we've got to get to the floor. So if you could just wrap up real quick for me.
Yep. Just in support of HB 4809. And
thank you, sir.
Yep.
I appreciate it. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on for or against House Bill 489? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Chair Capriglione to close on House Bill 4809. And Chair, I just want to be clear, today you have laid out the introduced version of HB 4809.
That is right. I misspoke. I intend to have a committee substitute. I look forward to working with everyone on the committee in strengthening our families. I close.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair Capriglione. If there's no objection, House Bill 4809 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 4809 is left pending. Without objection, the committee will recess until the final adjournment or recess of the House today or during the period authorized for reading and referral of bills if permission is granted by the House. The committee stands recessed.